Hello everyone. There was once a road with no sound of guns. No bombs, no bullets. It left behind not a single footprint. Working silently and quietly until the South was completely liberated. Few people knew about it. And even today it is rarely mentioned. This was the secret, money road, during wartime. So how did this road operate with such absolute secrecy? Right after peace was restored in the North in 1954. The State Bank of Vietnam began planning financial support for the South, mainly in the form of currency issued by the Saigon government. Back then, Saigon was a free market with abundant goods. Buying things was easy, as long as you had one thing: money. To get this money, the Foreign Exchange Bureau had to use the state budget, send it to Hong Kong to be exchanged for US dollars. Then bring it back to Vietnam and transport it southward along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Operatives of the Vietnamese army in the south were tasked with receiving the funds and converting them into Saigon currency to buy food, weapons, medicine, and ammunition for the battlefield. But here was the problem. Getting dollars was already difficult, and converting them into Saigon currency was even harder. Each year, millions of dollars were sent south. If someone suddenly showed up with a huge amount of money, suspicion was inevitable. So, the Vietnamese army devised a method: breaking the money into small amounts and exchanging it at gold shops. At that time, in Saigon, especially around Cho Lan and Gia Dinh, there were hundreds of gold shops. Each day, they would visit 4 shops, exchanging about $500 at each. In about 15 days, the entire sum would be exchanged. Then the cycle would start again. This way, the enemy could not recognize faces or detect a pattern. However, this method didn't last long. Exchanging money in such small sums took too much time. Sometimes it took 2 or 3 months just to gather enough money for one large purchase. At that pace, the army risked starving before running out of bullets. That's when the Vietnamese army turned to the black market. In the early 1960s, $1 officially exchanged for 140 Saigon dong. But on the black market, it fetched 190. Operatives disguised themselves as overseas Vietnamese returning home, spoke fluent English, and exchanged money directly in the black market. It was more profitable and less likely to attract the attention of the enemy. Since all black market dealings were illegal, each time they could trade thousands of dollars, both sides had to stay discreet. So transactions went smoothly. Still, this method had 2 big problems. First, such exchanges could only happen once or twice a year. After all, how many overseas Vietnamese could plausibly come back every few months and spend thousands of dollars? Second, transporting money from the north to the south via the Ho Chi Minh Trail was extremely dangerous. US bombs ravaged everything. Even if money was hidden inside modern containers, the intense heat would burn it to ashes. So the Vietnamese army came up with another solution: create funds directly inside Saigon without detection. They worked with wealthy merchants. Merchants would withdraw Saigon currency and hand it over to the Vietnamese army, who would pay them back in US dollars. Of course, carrying millions in cash through Saigon was impossible. If caught, it would destroy the entire network. The solution was this: merchants delivered the Saigon money first. Then the Vietnamese army gave them a check. But it wasn't a real bank check. It was simply a torn page from a wall calendar. On it were the recipient's details and the amount of money, all written in coded numbers that looked like a phone number. If the paper was ever confiscated, no one would understand what it meant. Merchants could then take this check to a bank in Hong Kong and receive their dollars. Why would merchants agree to such risky deals? After all, there was no legal paperwork. If the army defaulted, they had no one to sue. Naturally, some were suspicious, but those chosen for cooperation were usually sympathetic to the revolution. Plus, the army always exchanged at black market rates, which meant extra profit for the merchants. Trust was built slowly, not with huge sums at first, but gradually. Once trust was established, the machine ran smoothly. But that was only the beginning. Securing Saigon currency alone wasn't enough. The Vietnamese army also needed Thai baht and, especially, Cambodian riel, to purchase essential goods such as rice, food supplies, clothing, medicine, and chemicals from neighboring countries. So how did they obtain Cambodian riel and smuggle goods back to Vietnam without being detected? That story will come in the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. For today's topic, we'll stop here. Thank you all for watching. If you have an interesting topic, please leave a comment below. For now, Goodbye and see you again.